Welcome to your astrological forecast for the week of Monday, August 15th through Sunday, August 21st, 2022. This week is pretty interesting. Looking at the astrology of the coming weeks and coming months ahead, it kind of became clear to me that this week really everything is being set up for some major events that will transpire later on. In other words, this is actually a relatively stable or maybe even uneventful time. There have been a lot of aspects lately that I've been talking about that would have major financial implications, ramifications. We did just cross a sort of turning point, especially with the Lionsgate and everything, and all these other aspects happening. There is a lot changing, I think, especially in the background. But all that being said, we do live in interesting times. There's never a dull moment. But relatively speaking, I think what's happening now is actually not so much about the current moment. It's everything that's happening now will become much more clear later on. We can see why things are kind of falling into place the way they are before everything kind of hits the fan in a few weeks, in a couple months. Mostly in October, everything's going to get a lot more intense. So I don't know if that makes sense at all, but let me give you kind of the headlines to give you some specifics here. So this week we do have one planet changing signs. That would be Mars entering Gemini. So the Martian energy, the drive, the how we assert ourselves, what we fight for, all of that is going to become much more intellectual, much more scattered in Gemini. So there's definitely that transition. Mars actually becomes stronger as it enters Gemini. Not that it's a super strong sign for Mars necessarily, but Mars will at least not be in detriment like it was in Taurus. So we do see that ramping up just a little bit. We also have a third quarter moon this week that will shake things up quite a bit. This is going to shake things up mostly just in your personal life. This is, it's just a third quarter moon. That's something we experience every month. Not a really big deal in the kind of global, in the grand scheme of things, but we will experience a personal kind of uptick in a little bit of hecticness and craziness right around that day. Something important too that's happening this week is that Mercury, excuse me, voice crack. Mercury actually enters its pre-shadow this week at 24 degrees Virgo. So, yes, it hasn't been retrograde for several months now. It feels like a long time for me. And so Mercury will retrograde soonish. And it enters its pre-shadow this week, which basically means that it's entering the area that it will eventually retrograde back over. So, no, it's not that Mercury's retrograding this week or anything like that. It's just that Mercury's traveling so fast, it's going through parts of Virgo that it's not fully digesting, if that makes sense. So, Mercury is exalted in Virgo. We're learning a lot. We're organizing a lot. The mental energy is maybe at its highest right now, and we can use that in a lot of ways. But it's almost like things are progressing too quickly. The mental energy is traveling too fast. We're digesting too much. We're not fully integrating our experiences right now. And that's okay. That's why Mercury retrogrades, so that we can go back over this area later. That's the whole kind of point. So all in all, it's kind of an interesting week. The planets are still pretty scattered, as you can see, and it will stay that way until the inner planets start to group up in Libra in October. But for now, we're still dealing with kind of a wide array of energies. The main focus, I would say, is still Taurus until Mars leaves that sign anyway this week. So that's kind of ending and breaking up now. But yeah, let's get into the specific day by day here. So we start out Monday, August 15th with the moon in Aries. This is nice. I said last week it was kind of funny that the sun and moon were both in fire signs for Monday for my last forecast when the moon was in Sagittarius. And then now we kind of start out in maybe a sort of similar way with moon and Aries. So I definitely like this for a Monday. Again, we have both the luminaries, the sun and the moon, in fire signs. So that's really great for just getting your motor running on a Monday morning, getting things into action, and getting that activity going, rolling with whatever you're doing. So that's really great, I think. Moon will be crossing over Jupiter, and then later in the day it will cross over Chiron, like much later in the day, in the evening. But moon crossing over Jupiter, I think, is interesting. For one, it just adds fuel to the fire, so to speak. Jupiter expands things, and in Aries, this is it's an energy very much focused on expansion. So we will experience that kind of jovialness early on in the morning. Maybe just feeling more energetic and optimistic. That's something that should be expected with these more fiery energies anyway, with the sun and the moon. But especially with moon crossing over Jupiter, you will feel that happy-go-lucky energy that we all know Jupiter to kind of bring out in us. However, on another kind of note with this, something that I haven't talked about lately, but that is actually pretty significant, is that Jupiter went retrograde just very recently, and that was actually when there was all this kind of talk starting of economic recession and blah blah blah. We've been in 2 quarters of economic contraction or what have you. So that's where there's all this kind of talk, the realization, oh, okay, maybe things actually aren't as, super great and expanding as we thought they were. With Jupiter turning retrograde, it pulls that expansion energy back inward, it contracts. So that's where we've had this kind of, I think, perception shift in regard to the economy. So with Moon crossing over Jupiter, it kind of brings the attention there. Not only emotionally, but also kind of mentally as well. So I think this could just maybe make us more aware of the situation. It's not going to necessarily dramatically change anything, I don't think. It's just going to bring our attention to this recent contraction. This contraction is not only economic, really, on a more soulful, on a non-physical plane. The economy is just a reflection of our own internal psyches in a way. So that's where these things become pretty apparent with astrology. I think, the real change is going on inside of us, if that makes sense, with Moon crossing over Jupiter. It just shows that we are becoming more aware of this shift, of this contraction, of the energy going inward. But yeah, generally speaking, for a Monday, lots of fire energy, really great for being productive and stuff in general. Let's go forward to Tuesday. So Tuesday, August 16th, Moon enters Taurus. Very late in the day, though. Actually, I'm not even going to talk about that. Moon enters Taurus so close to midnight that we'll just say Moon is in Aries for basically all of Tuesday, especially for Eastern Standard Time, where I'm basing this off of. So Moon continues to be in Aries. We will actually get that exact trine between the Moon and the Sun. I always like to mention that because this is definitely an aspect that has very tangible ramifications. There's this really strong, stable energy, and when you have this in the 2 fire signs, these are upbeat energies. These are really active. These energies want action. They want fun. And when you bring about this trine between the Sun and the Moon, this just becomes that much stronger and kind of girthier, if you will. So we're feeling strong. We're feeling energetic, generally speaking. Obviously, this will change depending on your own personal astrology, but as a whole, it looks like kind of good mood vibes for Monday and Tuesday, but especially Tuesday with that exact trine here. We do have one other aspect. So we have Mercury at 18 degrees Virgo trining Uranus at 18 degrees Taurus. This also brings the attention to recent changes in our lives, especially with the economy, as well as how we are dealing with financial issues on a personal level too. How are we managing our resources, our commodities, our investments? And that includes not just money, but our time, our energy. Where are we putting that? Are we, are our priorities in check? What are our values? All that kind of thing is coming into play. Mercury in Virgo likes to analyze everything, and it does so in order to ensure ultimate efficiency or efficacy. It wants to make the most of everything. So with this aspect trining Uranus, this does a couple different things. Just like Moon crossing over Jupiter, Mercury trining Uranus brings the attention to this recent shift in finances, and again, not just as a society, but also personally. But also, having the planet of intellect and, what's going on with us on a mental level, Mercury, having that make a trine or a communication with Uranus, which is the planet of epiphanies and perception shifts and awakening. This is, maybe the best aspect for realizing new things or having a paradigm shift. I think, again, this is pointing to a shift, not necessarily in your physical environment, although it could be that. I think this is more pointing to a change happening within us on a mental level or psychological level. Because this is happening in Earth signs, this may especially pertain to, again, finances, resources, investments, where are we, what are our priorities, what do we value. So with all of that, you may suddenly realize something new. You may have a new perception, a new awareness. This can be very uncomfortable, but it can also be extremely valuable. And then that's where the change eventually comes. The change comes from your free will, because when you gain that knowledge or that perception, it's up to you to decide, how are you going to apply that? Are you going to apply it? And if so, how? That's all up to you. So so kind of, it's interesting. It's interesting to analyze as an astrologer, because this is more psychological. It's more just that epiphany moment. I think on a more physical level, this could also result in maybe some natural events, like weather events or earthquakes. Having this action in the earth signs. It doesn't look too heavy or destructive, though. This is a trine, so these energies are blending together pretty well. Okay, and then for Wednesday, August 17th, Moon enters Taurus very close to midnight, the night, Tuesday night, basically. So basically, all of Wednesday, Moon will be in Taurus. This is a much more grounded sign for the Moon to be in. Moon is exalted here. And this gets kind of interesting too, because the Sun is in domicile in Leo. It's very comfortable there. Sun is very strong for this whole Leo season, of course, just like it always is. And then with Moon in Taurus, this is the sign of Moon's exaltation. So both the Sun and the Moon are very strong, very powerful. They're very at home here. They're very, very strong, each in their own very different way. So with Moon in Taurus, we can generally be more emotionally grounded and kind of sure of ourselves. We can be receptive to others and very much empathetic, but also knowing our own boundaries and asserting ourselves how we'd like to be too. So that's why the Moon is exalted in Taurus, because it's kind of the best of all of that. It's the maybe most balanced sign emotionally, dare I say. So we can look forward to that, to having that balance of the ego and outspoken nature of Leo, wanting to have fun and be in the moment, but also the kind of sturdiness, the practicality, the foresight of Moon and Taurus as well. These energies do clash by sign. They are very different, but they also can balance one another too. So that's what we're all experiencing, kind of in a different way. There is one major caveat, though, to the sturdiness, the stability of Moon and Taurus. Basically, we have North Node, Uranus, and Mars all in Taurus. I would say these are probably the three most volatile energies that we have, and all being in Taurus right now before Mars makes that switch into Gemini. This does mean that as the Moon crosses over those points, we could expect some turbulence. North Node is generally very harmonious, though. The Moon is literally on an upswing above the plane of the solar system as it approaches and crosses over the North Node. So this does show, a generally positive or easy kind of aspect. But the Moon also has to cross over Uranus pretty much right after that. So that's where you can expect some unpredictability, maybe some additional awakenings or perception shifts as well here. We have one kind of minor aspect. Moon looks like right around noon Eastern Standard Time. Moon does square Venus. This is another aspect. I don't know why everything seems to relate to finances lately, but Venus being the planet not only of our finances, but also on a more general level, it's how we support ourselves and how we approach our desires, how we find pleasure. All of that is being squared by the Moon, so this could show that maybe we are overindulging, or maybe our desires are not in line with our true best interests. Things of that nature. So I would suggest to approach desire and pleasure in moderation, as always, but especially with this aspect, of course. All right, and then Thursday, August 18th. Moon continues through Taurus. Looks like it's actually Thursday morning that Moon will cross over North Node and Uranus. So, again, on the more negative side of things, maybe it could be unpredictable, or there could be some kind of sudden change. But on the more positive side of things, you may realize something new again. This could especially come intuitively, so some kind of just unexplained awareness or perception shift. So I would pay special attention to your mood on Thursday. What are you feeling, and then what are the kind of thoughts or the intuition that is circling around that feeling? Because there may be something very new and unpredicted there. This also has to do with your finances and your resources. It could pertain to other areas as well. You know, we all have different charts, so depending on where this falls in your chart, it could apply to another area of your life. But generally speaking, this is about resources, commodities, investments. What are you investing your time into, or who are you investing your time into? How are you managing your energy? All of that you may have a kind of different attitude or different approach to on Thursday that may just kind of come out of nowhere, if that makes sense. Thursday we have Venus at 8 degrees Leo, making a trine to Jupiter at 8 degrees Aries. I think this is interesting. Again, Jupiter turning retrograde was what really shifted shifted a lot of things economically, but also just in our lives. This whole, expansion phase that we were having with Jupiter and Aries has contracted quite a bit. Jupiter and Venus are the two benefics. These are the two planets above all else that, shine the brightest in the sky, after the sun and moon, of course. And they generally bestow us with abundance and pleasure and all these kind of good, really sweet, easy themes to deal with. So when they're trining like this is really excellent, having both the benefics, making this strong, positive, easy aspect to one another, especially in fire signs where they're generally, pretty strong. Neither planet is technically in domicile or exalted, but I do think both do very well in each of the signs that they're in. So this is generally very harmonious. However, we do have to take into account that Jupiter is retrograde, so the kind of wealth and pleasure and abundance that we're going to have or experience with this aspect may be kind of subtle or psychological. It may be an internal confidence or internal pleasure, something a little bit, I almost said seductive, I don't know why, maybe that's part of it, but something more subtle or kind of behind the scenes, if that makes sense. I'll let you just kind of maybe ruminate on that and see what that means to you, because I think that is kind of what's going on here. Another thing that technically is not happening on Thursday, but I really have to mention because it kind of is at the same time. We technically have a third quarter moon happening very early Friday morning, but because it's so early in the day or in the night even, very early Friday morning, you'll feel this on Thursday as well. This third quarter moon happening very late Thursday night or whatever you want to call it. And of course, that may depend on your time zone, whether it technically happens on Thursday or Friday. But basically, we're going to feel this third quarter moon Thursday and Friday, is how I would approach it. So this means that things will feel a little bit more tense, maybe stressful or anxious. Third quarter moons are not as intense as first quarter moons, they're more philosophical in nature. But there can be a crisis in consciousness that comes about with third quarter moons. I think this is especially relevant since we just had multiple aspects this week pointing to Uranus, basically. So pointing to new awakenings or perception shifts. And we just had moon crossing over Uranus just before this third quarter moon. This third quarter moon will happen at 26 degrees of Taurus. So I wouldn't say conjunct Uranus, but it's close enough that it's relevant, I guess. So depending on the orb you use, you could say Uranus is conjunct this third quarter moon. So third quarter moons are already crises in consciousness, and then when you add in Uranus, which is the planet of awakenings and perception shifts, as I've said, you can definitely expect the unexpected, expect sudden change, expect some volatility. And expect just, completely new ideas or feelings that come to you out of nowhere. Suddenly something that was fine before, you may realize, actually, looking from this new vantage point, maybe I can do better. Maybe I can improve this in some way. So just look out for that. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more on Friday as well. Let's just go to Friday here. So Friday, August 19th. We do technically have that third quarter moon, so that will continue through Friday as well. I would definitely expect that to continue here. However, Moon does leave Taurus and enter Gemini, which that leads me to the next thing that's kind of a multiple day thing going on here. Moon and Mars enter Gemini almost the same time. You can see here around noon Eastern Standard Time, just before noon actually, Moon enters Gemini here. And later in the day, actually very early on Saturday, Mars will enter Gemini. So they're within about 12 hours of each other. I'll talk more about that for Saturday. But as for Friday, we're still coming off of this third quarter moon that happens very early in the morning. So we'll feel that definitely going into the day here. Moon does, enter Gemini right after making that square aspect to the sun, that third quarter moon aspect. So that does kind of, I think, make things a little bit less intense, since the moon will be at least sextiling the sun by sign, if not by aspect. Moon and Gemini generally blends very well with Sun and Leo. These signs are two away from each other. Leo and Gemini have enough in common that they do blend together very well. However, we're still coming off of that 90-degree aspect. So we'll still feel that tension, maybe the anxiety, all these feelings that are basically just pushing us to make change. That's all it is. It doesn't have to be stressful if we are applying ourselves, if we are, active in some kind of way. Especially with Sun and Leo, that's what Leo Sun wants. It wants activity. It wants, us to use our energy, find what makes us energetic, and apply our energy in the best way, in a strong way. So all this is to say, I think honestly, even though the third quarter moon technically doesn't happen on Thursday, I think Thursday will be the more stressful day, because that's where the pressure is building. You'll still feel it Friday, but it's beginning to release. It's beginning to become more easygoing, especially because Moon is in Gemini. This is a really light and breezy sign. It can be a little bit neurotic and scattered at times, but Moon in Gemini likes to keep things light. We like to, let's not get too deep into things. Let's just kind of explore all the possibilities here. Let's try to round ourselves with multiple different facets here. So this energy does kind of blend better with the Sun and Leo, as I said. So so I'm not sure what to say to do on Friday. I think it'd be a good day for being productive, with that square still kind of into play. Apply yourself somehow. Do something. I don't think resting would necessarily go very well on Friday. Maybe some kind of social activity or being active would work as well. We'll definitely want to do something. This is a more active day for sure. Sun and Moon both in active signs. Moon still coming off that 90-degree aspect. You're going to want to do something, because it's going to be hard to relax today for sure. Okay, and then Saturday, August 20th, Mars enters Gemini. So I do think this is interesting. By now, Moon has already cruised on through half of Gemini. It moves so quickly, but still, Moon and Mars enter Gemini around the same time, which I think is kind of interesting. So I think this is nice, actually, because like I said, in the last few weeks, we've actually been lacking air placements a little bit. The chart is pretty well rounded. The planets are pretty scattered, but lacking those air placements and air planets for the last few weeks did make things kind of stifled. Things could feel a little bit serious or heavy with the lack of air. So now I would say the chart is very well rounded, with Sun and Venus in Leo, which is fire, of course, Mercury in earthy, Virgo, and then now Moon and Mars in Gemini. Only element we're kind of lacking is water. We just have Neptune in Pisces, so we are lacking water. I guess lacking water can make things lack feeling or sensitivity. That intuition maybe isn't there. So things can be more focused on the physical world with the lack of water. Or we could be kind of oblivious to the more sensitive side of things, so the more creative or intuitive side of things. So there's always some kind of drawback if you're lacking an element, but still things are relatively well-rounded with this abundance of fire, earth, and air. But otherwise, Saturday, Moon continues through Gemini. I think things will feel much lighter on Saturday, which is kind of nice as we start out the weekend. Moon is beginning to, it's definitely left that square, and it's beginning to approach the sextile with the sun. So combining Sun in Leo with Moon in Gemini, this is really beautiful. These are two energies that are very kind of childlike and playful. They really don't want to take things too seriously. They want to have a lot of fun. That's probably the main shared theme of Leo Sun with Gemini Moon, I think. These energies also complement each other nicely because Sun in Leo is very physically oriented, wanting that physical activity, as I mentioned. And then Moon in Gemini is much more intellectual, inquisitive, curious, sociable. So there's a nice balance here. Kind of whatever you want to do. I think Saturday could be a really good day for having some fun, socializing, or whatever your idea of fun is. It could be something solitary too. Um, really whatever you want. With Mars and Gemini, again, like I said at the beginning of the video, the what we are driven toward, what we are desiring in the sense of our ambitions, we're desiring to be more diversified. So I think this is almost very strategic. We don't want to overly commit ourselves to any one thing right now. We want to kind of have multiple plans and backup plans, maybe multiple projects going on at the same time, if that makes sense. Okay, and then lastly, Sunday, August 21st. Things do get kind of wild here a little bit. Moon continues through Gemini, and it actually won't quite enter Cancer by the end of the day, Sunday. So Moon is in Gemini for the whole weekend, actually, which I think, again, is very nice, just like Saturday, combining Sun in Leo with Moon in Gemini. Very beautiful. And on Sunday, we'll actually get that exact sextile aspect between the Sun and the Moon. So this is like the peak harmoniousness, if you will, of blending these two energies, these two very fun, childlike, playful signs. So I think that's really beautiful, especially for having fun, maybe relaxing or doing something really enjoyable this weekend. Not all weekends are like this. A lot of weekends would almost be better being productive or just resting. But this one, I think it's supporting us just having a lot of fun. Kind of almost kind of perfect for the weekend, really. So that's really beautiful. On a different note, though, we do have one aspect. So Mercury at 24 degrees Virgo will oppose Neptune at 24 degrees Pisces. And this actually makes a T-square with the moon. So moon will also happen to be, you can even see in this chart right now for noon, it looks like moon will cross over at the exact degree to really make a T-square with Mercury and Neptune. It will at least be, here you can see noon Eastern Standard Time, we have this T-square happening pretty exactly with an orb of only 1 degree. So this is pretty wild. Moon is so quick that I think it's kind of rare for it to be involved in such complex aspects like this. This gets really interesting because Mercury is so at home in Virgo and Neptune is so at home in Pisces. Technically I would say Pisces is ruled by Jupiter, but Neptune is almost like Jupiter's kind of roommate, if you will. It kind of lives there too. So this gets really interesting when you take into account not only the clash of these two very strong energies, but also third moon is third wheeling it too and clashing. So what does this mean? So here we have it's a mutable T-square. So all the mutable signs have to do with being adaptable and learning. Facilitating our growth through expanding to something different from what we are maybe used to, accepting change, learning something new, adapting, all that good stuff. All the mutable signs do so in very different ways, but that's the shared kind of theme here, learning and adapting. Mercury in Virgo is, of course, the mental energy. Mental energy is very strong, and it's focused on physicality since it's an earth energy. So Mercury in Virgo is more focused on organizing on a physical level. It's focused on our physical health and our physical lifestyle, for instance. Neptune in Pisces is more the non-physical health, non-physical lifestyle, so our emotional health, mental health, if you will, and especially applying this axis here, the Virgo Pisces axis, really has to do with integration more than anything else. So are we allowing ourselves to kind of rest and reflect from time to time in order to integrate our experiences? Because doing so is absolutely necessary for gaining intuition, basically. We can't truly learn if we are being active all the time. We have to rest. We have to process things. So even, something I think I said in the last forecast is, even if we are having to be productive, if you are doing some kind of menial, mundane task like, gardening, cooking, cleaning, all these like Virgo things, all these things that we don't think of as being super fun, all these kind of chores, these can actually be especially great for building intuition, because when you are kind of in the rhythm of things, and you're doing something with your hands that you don't necessarily have to have your active mind on at full speed in order to do, that's where the mind, I think, kind of relaxes, and then that's where you enter this almost more subconscious state where you can really actually figure things out on a deep level, deep down. So that's where we get this beautiful interplay between Virgo and Pisces. Maybe doing something just menial like organizing, but finding spirituality in the process. There is spirituality in the most mundane parts of our lives, if that makes sense. So all of that is a lot going on, but when we factor in Moon and Gemini as well, we're also wanting to be scattered. We're wanting to be spontaneous with Moon and Gemini. We have that intellectual curiosity that I talked about. So we're wanting to bring that into the mix as well. To be totally honest, bringing all three of these energies together or clashing them together like this can make us feel a little bit crazy at times. It can also make us feel prone to mental burnout. So I would really say don't overdo it with the analysis or the really detailed plans today on Sunday. Maybe just kind of take it easy, relax if you can, be spontaneous, but in a kind of just chill, relaxed way, because the focus is on integration right now. And I really want to stress it's really important. That's kind of actually key to our survival, because if you don't pause, reflect, and integrate, then you won't be able to truly adapt to the major changes that are about to happen in the near future and in the far future as well, because we have a lot of stuff going on in the future. But yeah, that's what I have for this week generally. So on the one hand, it's kind of a really chill week, not much going on. But on the other hand, there's definitely a lot of little key indicators this week that there are major changes happening in our world. So I do think this week is about kind of preparation, about getting everything in order. Um, and this will continue through August and September. Like I said, October is where the planets start to kind of congregate in one sort of area, and then that will make for some really wild aspects in very late October and then going into November. So yeah, just enjoy this, I guess. Next week we do have a lot of headlines, so to speak. Sun will enter Virgo. We'll also have Mercury entering Libra, and again, Mercury's in that pre-shadow zone. Um, Mercury being in its pre-shadow, it just means that we have to traverse this area again in the near future. So like I said before, if you're not fully integrating everything right now, if you're not fully understanding everything, kudos to you for at least knowing that, because I think most people wouldn't, if that makes sense. But also just, be at peace with that, really, because everything, we will feel this increased speed of Mercury in the next couple of weeks before it turns retrograde. So this is just part of the process. We will kind of go back over what's happening now in the near future, if that makes sense. Hopefully that's okay. But yeah, next week we also have Uranus turning retrograde, so that will be interesting, and a new moon in Virgo, really kickstarting the Virgo season. Especially just because Sun will enter Virgo as well just before that. But yeah, that's what I have for you for this week's astrology. I hope you're well, and I'll talk to you later.